My name is Walter Blanks Jr. and I am here to fight to give children access to the best education possible. Now, I am originally from Ohio and I know firsthand what it feels like to be in a school that has failed me time and time again with the promise of something better down the line. And I refuse to let more children just like me fall through the cracks of our public education system. I believe that every single child has the right to a high quality education regardless of skin color, economic background, or the family that they were born into. And I also want parents to understand that they have a right and they should be empowered to contact their legislator to continue to expand options, not only for their children, but for children across the state of Rhode Island. I've dedicated my life to this work and it's something that I am very, very proud of. And I will not stop until every single child in this country has access to a high quality education. Today, we have invited educators, legislators, religious leaders, and parents across the state of Rhode Island to dive deeper into the positive effects of school choice on children in this state. What does school choice mean to you?
It's a great question. It means to me that as a parent, I get to choose what is best fit for my family and my children. That's what it means to me, and it shouldn't be based on where I live or how much I make.
Often when we talk about school choice and the benefits that it has, not just for students but for parents, we often talk about the cost of tuition, because that's usually a big deal, usually why most parents don't send their kids to private school to begin with. So if sending your kids to a private school, if that was a financial sacrifice, if there was things that you had to give up as a parent, would that be worth it? Would you be willing to do that as a parent, and why?
Well, yes, it's a sacrifice, and I don't think that depending on your income it's a sacrifice. I think right now in this day and age, regardless of how much your household income is, it is a sacrifice. Yes, I think it's worth it, especially being a parent who and past student who went to a private school and seeing the sacrifice that my parents made. It definitely was worth it for the attentiveness, the attention, the discipline, the structure. I felt that it definitely was worth it for myself, so that's why I chose it for my children.
Why do you think it's so important that more children have access to that?
Well, I think school choice is so important to allow, the parents, especially in our community, to choose the environment, to choose the culture that they want their children to prosper and to grow. And they want a culture too where they feel safe, where they feel respected. We have many students who come in because of those reasons. And I think we have a faculty and a staff who do that on a daily basis. They nurture our children not only in the faith, but also to show them to make good decisions, be respectful of each other, to be kind and generous. And I think our school has grown more than just as a place of academics. It's also a second family to many of our students.
What are some of the challenges that you see the students at your school facing on a daily basis?
One of the primary reasons why families send their children to our school because of safety. They know that they're looked out after, that someone's watching over them, that they're investing in their children in our schools. I think a lot of our students look forward to coming to school. It's a place where they can feel safe. It's a place where their friends are. It's a place where they know that adults are looking after them. And I think in a community where sometimes it's very unstable, our school is an oasis of stability. I think students in general, children in general, crave stability and structure and organization.
In education and in life, in rearing children, we form, we inform, and we transform their lives. And we don't do it alone. Children need structure. Yeah. I don't care what school they go to, or how many children in their family, or what their socioeconomic background is, okay? Children need structure. They need to get up in the morning and at least know there's a plan for their day. And I think that's been taken away, and it's not just the public school. There isn't an educator in the world who doesn't want to believe that whatever it is that they're doing is making a difference. education is not a job. It's not, I mean, you need to be able to earn a livable wage, but it's not. People who go into education and stay in education and smile about it, okay, really see education as a ministry. It's a calling. It really is.
We parents, and I could speak for a lot of us parents, is that we're giving our children to you, the school system, the teachers, the community, and our children spend more time in school more than they do at home. So we are relying on quality care, education, love, everything that we want to provide our children that we do at home. So why not choose where you want to go? Why not talk to other parents and ask them what their experience is when bringing their children to other schools?
One of the roles of our government is to provide free, appropriate public education for all students. And I'm totally supportive of that because I want all students to be able to go to school. On the other hand, appropriate has different definitions for different people. And for my family, being able to choose a faith-based education was, to me, what was going to be appropriate for my family. And I had the opportunity to make that choice. My husband had a good job, and we were able financially to make that choice. And as I saw so many people desiring that and not having the funds to make that choice, I became very pro-school choice and supportive of this tax credit program because we saw these lives transformed and kids who their other experience was not appropriate for them got into a new environment and just thrived. And parents were thrilled with their experience. And I just thought everybody should be able to go to the school that meets their particular needs and interests. I remember a young girl coming in the 5th grade who was pretty shy and just not very confident. And people used to say, aren't you putting them in a bubble, or aren't you, sheltering them? But what I saw was the opposite, because this young child, as kind of shy and lacking confidence in a small situation, was able to find her niche, gain confidence, and by 8th grade, that's when we were still K through 8, by 8th grade, she found her voice, she was leading, she was ready to go into the high school of her choice, which in that situation was a public high school, ready to lead and not feeling overwhelmed by that at all. And to see that kind of growth in kids is really wonderful. I'm very supportive of public education. It's absolutely necessary, and I know lots of wonderful teachers, but it doesn't fit everybody, and therefore I think all parents should have the choice to place their children in a school where they're going to thrive and become the best people they can be.
Yeah, that's incredible. When I was growing up, I had teachers tell me I wouldn't amount to anything or I'd never really be anything. And once I got into my private school, a Christian school, I decided, I was going to prove all those teachers, from the past wrong. And because of my education, I've been able to travel the country to inspire more kids, right? I sat next to the president and told him, I'm coming for your job. All of these different unique opportunities would not have been possible if not for my education. And so I think it's important for people to understand that it's not just about the education, which is important, but we're talking about the life of a child well after they graduate. How they can really benefit from a good education even after they get out of school. And so that's something important, and I think it's often forgot about and overlooked. We're always talking about, the money for this and the money for that, which, yes, that's a discussion that we need to have. But at the end of the day, if we're not looking out for the children, then, what are we doing?
Just because of your, geographic area shouldn't limit you to a particular type of school or to a school. I feel that, everyone should be afforded the opportunity to expand their horizons and, and go to a school that meets their needs and the needs of their families. I don't feel that it should be, they should have to deal with the parameters that, a lot of families do.
Why do you think it's important for all families to have that option, but not just that option, but also the flexibility to make the best choice for their own selves?
Because if it's not a good fit, and that is a word that we use a lot in schools, if it's not a good fit, I'm preschool, and you just know right off the bat, they might need a different setting. If we're not a good fit, and it's not so much about the child, it's about giving them the environment that they need to be most successful. And sometimes that means my parents had to give up building a house so that way I could go to St. Ray's. And that was a huge sacrifice, but they knew that going to public school was not a good fit for me, and I was struggling. As soon as I went to St. Ray's, I blossomed. And when you give someone that right environment, they'll blossom.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are some of the biggest roadblocks that you see that children are having in their education?
We used to live in a kind of a we-centered world where things that were done, it was people doing for each other. And what's changed a little bit is it's become a very I-centered world. And that's had a profound impact in terms of children's respect for elders, children's respect for teachers.
Roadblocks, I think, first is awareness. We need to be informed about the issues that are going on at the local level, at the state level, at the national level. And then once we're informed, we need to hold people accountable who are in positions of authority at all levels. That includes the local school board, the local town council, the local leadership in the town itself, those who work for the town or city, and then of course on the state and the national level. We need to be much more informed, I think.
So you talk about being informed, and I agree with you completely. That's something that's very, very important, especially for parents as they're making these decisions. But now, specifically here in Rhode Island, one thing that I've noticed is that there's a lot of opposition to school choice on the political level. And so how do you think, or what is the best way for parents to get involved?
Well, I think we need to work through our politicians, those who serve us in public office. We need to make our concerns known. I think we need to be visible. When it comes time to go to the State House, for example, for legislation that's being considered, we need to get our people, we need to rally our people, and not just parents of those children who are involved in a Catholic or private school, but we need to involve all our people and all our congregations, no matter what church it is.
When it comes to advocating, what is something that you would say to a policymaker, politician here in Rhode Island to really get the message across that not only are my children benefiting from this, but there are many more children who can and want to benefit from this?
I think that a lot of parents are on that line and that fence where if a politician or the government actually help them, where all children are equal and really looking at them as children. I mean, they're fighting for, trying to do the new academic, the Eureka Math and all this, and every child learns differently. Well, they all learn differently, and every parent knows what their child needs. So I feel that as a taxpayer, as a parent, as a worker and everything, they should really take into consideration that every little bit helps. And I think that they're really not considering that altogether.
So I would really have multiple things to share with them. But I think, first of all, is just investing in education, investing in school choice, and allowing parents to pick the school that works best for them is something that's worthwhile, simply because the one thing we know is that we have a great track record, as do most of our faith-based schools, in terms of graduation competencies, in terms of the skills that they've acquired, in terms of their ability to succeed in the universities of their choice. And ultimately, these educated students will stay in town, and they'll be, the people that will actually help us to grow the city and to grow education. To me, when I look at it and I see the quality of institutions here in town that value education, you have Brown University, Rhode Island School of Design, and just the entire New England culture is that where they value education. And I feel like if we were able to invest in education in that very same way with our youth, there would be a profound impact on the entire state for the many years to come.
Well, first thing I would say to them is come see our school. Spend some time.
Yeah.
Come down to the school, talk to some of the students, talk to some of the faculty, talk to some of the staff, talk to me, and you'll see why that we need school choice. Come to the school, see what's going on, be part of the culture from it. So when we can get an opportunity to have a student in who wouldn't otherwise be in, that's one of the most satisfying moments that we can possibly experience. So.
I think I would encourage them to listen to the families who have had the experiences where their children have been transformed, because I think when you listen to those families, to hear how thrilled they are with the opportunity to attend the school of their choice, I think it can answer those questions of like, is this really the best for people? And is it really the best for the state? The dollars that come into, for example, the tax credit program, they are small compared to the benefits, I think, that the state gets by having more productive citizens from the children who are doing well. But I think if they will listen to the voices of families who have been benefited, they would realize this is a good program.
To look at the statistics of college placement and success rates of kids who are limited to a particular school or a public school versus a magnet school, a charter school, a private school, and really look at the numbers of success rates and what the children come out of that with, what they take away, as you said, the fundamentals and the problem-solving skills and things that you may not learn in schools where you're limited or where you don't feel like you thrive. So I feel that would be something they really, really need to look at, and maybe also look at the financial aspect for parents who really want to send their child to a school, but it limits them because of finances. So I would love for the officials to look at that and give everyone that same opportunity.
I would probably ask them, what would you do if a loved one that you had to place them somewhere and you had to choose to put them in a facility or a school and not being able to choose to leave them and teach them at home on your own? What would you do? How would you feel about that? And what would you need when you're placing a loved one in a school that you have to choose to put them in, because essentially during these times you can't really choose. It's not easy to choose to teach or your loved one at home or homeschool them. You have to choose a school. How would you feel about how they're going to be treated? How are you going to feel and be reassured that your child's going to be taken care of?
What does school choice mean to you?
My views on school choice are born out of my my belief that individuals need to control their own lives, and in every aspect, medically, personally, and of course educationally, and understanding that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to education. School choice was something that was very attractive to me once I became a legislator, or actually once I became a parent, because I was facing the consideration of what to do educationally with my children. So I think growing up as a child from a family who mostly attended public schools, I expected my children would as well. But once you actually have children, you start thinking a little bit more deeply about it, and And so I think that's probably where my journey began into not just the exploration of educational opportunities, but the real understanding of what's behind the school choice movement.
And that's so interesting. I'm glad you brought that up with the perspective of a parent. One thing that we often see is, politicians will say, they oppose school choice or they don't like school choice, but then will, turn around and send their own kids to private school or send their own kids to the school that they chose for them. There's no one size fits all model, at least there shouldn't be. And even me personally, like I come from a family of 6 kids. And so my older brother was the perfect child, couldn't do any wrong. And I was the one who was always in the principal's office, always getting in trouble. And so understanding that dynamic, I think, is really important. What would you say to someone who is in a district that doesn't have a high performing or a school that they would be zoned to that is performing well and have no other options, can't afford private school, or basically their only choice is to be in that school that's not serving their needs? What would you say to a constituent or someone?
It's not even what I would say, it's what I have been saying, because especially once the Johns Hopkins report came out, it became very evident to my colleagues to some of my colleagues, I want to qualify that. It became evident to some of my colleagues in the legislature that we needed to address this immediately. We had some schools in Providence that were reporting out a lower than 4% proficiency in math and English, and I mean these are numbers that aren't acceptable on any level for anything that we measure. And so we started at that point to hear, because we took the initiative. We started talking about school choice and expanding school choice, and in doing so, caught the attention of parents who, as you just described, maybe their zip code put them in a spot where the school was not addressing their child's needs. And so, regrettably, a lot of those conversations were tear-filled. A parent who tells you how much their child loves learning and loves the exploration of knowledge, but yet when they get into their particular school system, they're not stimulated, they're not challenged educationally by the curriculum or the staff, and frankly, we found a common theme to be just the societal environment. A lot of bullying, a lot of negligence, a lot of failure to maintain the facilities and things of that nature. So as a parent, it's very difficult to hear those stories, because I envision, of course, my children and sending them to a school that has rats running across the corridors and teachers that don't show up and classmates who are dealing drugs and doing things in the classroom or in the hallways, and it's exceptionally difficult to think of that. So what we do is we tell those parents that, I understand, Mrs. or Mr. Jones, where you are, and we're working on trying to expand the opportunities for you and your children, and we can really use your help and your support, even if it's a letter, even if it's your voice at a hearing. We want to hear your story, because your story obviously touches us, and it will touch others if you share it.
In 2006, specifically on the side of school choice, specifically, there's a tax credit here in Rhode Island. Was expanded once, and it's been pretty stagnant since then. As a policymaker, someone who is involved in these conversations all the time, what are some of the big roadblocks that you see to achieving significant strides in education reform?
There are several. First, you referenced the tax incentives, and we have put legislation in to support that program, where corporations in the state, entities can take a certain percentage of their money and have it dedicated to helping fund the education of students in an alternative educational environment. But it's only a small amount of money that is allowed to be put into this fund. We've been trying to expand the size of that fund because there are a lot of companies that want to donate to this program for 2 reasons. one, altruistically, they believe it's the right thing to do, and secondly, they're businesses, and they're trying to shelter some of their profits through tax deferment, and that's fine. We shouldn't punish companies for being prosperous and successful, but we should embrace them when they want to work with us as community partners and invest that money.
What are some things that parents and families can do now to have their voice heard, to amplify their voice, to make sure that they are heard when it comes to their child's education?
Yeah, there's no greater advocate for that child's education than their parents. And that's one of the first things I will always tell a parent with whom I engage in this sort of a conversation. You have to be that loud advocate. And as a legislator who has points of contact with constituents and non-constituents alike, all the time, constantly, all day, every day, phone, email, every sort of communication you can imagine. I tell those folks, you have to reach out first to your legislators, your actual legislators, and then you can reach out a little further to legislators on a committee that may be hearing a bill. I myself encourage those folks to embrace all three methods of communication, and I only refer to three. Email, which I think is the least personal and the least effective. A phone call, which I believe is extremely effective, but not often easy to execute, because oftentimes policymakers or elected officials just don't answer their phones. And the most effective is a handwritten letter, and in lieu of a handwritten letter, a hand-typed letter that's very personal and that demands a response. And that's policy making, that's elected officials. You have to hold our feet to the fire. So advocate to those people. Advocate to the general officers, the governor, the lieutenant governor, of course. Talk to the leaders of both legislative chambers. Engage with your community. So what do I mean by that? Well, here we are, right? We're engaging. And the folks here have constantly been engaging with us, which is great because it's an issue that requires that constant upkeep. However, the state would lose the tax revenue they would make on that money the company would otherwise have to pay taxes on if we allow them to put it in a tax-sheltered vehicle to educate students. So the state's been very reluctant from a financial standpoint to do that. That's the biggest roadblock there, is where are we going to get the money? Which is, it's a fairly common question whenever you're doing something legislatively, policy-wise, is where's the money going to come from? Another one of the challenges, we, not you, but old-timers, we grew up in a time where the institution of public education was something that was as American as apple pie, and it was as good as going to church on Sunday. It was what everybody did, and I think that mindset of, well, public education is exactly that. It's part of us. It's like an arm, a leg, or a heart. It's part of who we are. We somehow got away from that, and I think that started happening when there was a lot of pushback, and it was mostly driven, regrettably, by some of the public school teacher unions. And I mean, they're doing their job. The unions are doing their jobs in trying to defend their members. That's what they do. That's what they're there for. And I get that and I understand that. But I reject the vilification of charter schools, of parochial schools, private schools. Those two things are completely different. Let the union do its job and protect its membership. That's what they should do. But at the same time, let's go down the road of making education better for everyone, not just a few people. And those two roadblocks have really been, I think, the biggest stumbling blocks for us. So to finish my thought on the tax credit issue, it seems logical, although with policymakers a little bit esoteric, to say, okay, yes, the state will lose money over here by giving tax-deferred vehicles to corporations, but they'll be saving much more over here in the cost that child may have brought to that district. So again, that's a little esoteric for politicians, because they can't, if they don't see a cause and effect, they will typically reject it. especially when it comes to taxation. It's exceptionally hard unless that politician or that policymaker is a small business person or ever was a small business person. It's exceptionally difficult to get them to understand that a little bit of pain over here can reap tenfold rewards over here. It's not a notion very easily grasped by policymakers. So that, I think, is incumbent upon us when we present the legislation and represent it, to point that out and to work on trying as best we can to nail down some figures where we can say, yes, you're absolutely right, the state will lose $10 in taxes, but they're going to save $20 in extraneous expenses for this, that, or the other. So, you know, we'll do a better job as we go forward pushing the education reform initiatives as we learn of the objections, and that's how the legislative process works. So we will come back loaded for that question, and hopefully we'll be able to win some more hearts and minds than we did on the last go-around.
Thank you for joining us as we continue to empower parents to fight for the right to choose the best school for their children. Now, you can join in the fight too. You can reach out to a legislator and tell them that very thing, that children across this state deserve the right to a high quality education regardless of their zip code, skin color, or economic background. Thank you.